Welcome to this AgriWiz tutorial. I'm Yaku. In this video, I will guide you through creating a fertilizer mix from scratch or editing an existing one. We'll focus on creating a fertilizer mix for fertigation or hydroponic purposes using tanks. I recommend you watch our video titled Introduction to Fertilizer Mixes and Features before continuing with this video. I explained several concepts in that video that I won't be in this, since this is more of a step-by-step guide. Fertilizer programs and irrigation schedules are calculated using climate data at farm level. Therefore, each farm has its own fertilizer mixes. Fertilizer mixes must be managed under every farm. Also remember that fertilizer mixes should be designed for the same crop norm and season dates to avoid unpredictable recommendations. Let's jump into it. In our case, we'd like to add and edit fertilizer mixes for macadamia farm. There are several ways to get to macadamia farm's fertilizer mixes. From the dashboard, you can click on the farm name, then on fertilizer and irrigation. Alternatively, from the dashboard, use the navigation pane on the left side and click on the farm name. Again, click on the tab. A simpler and faster way to get there is to simply click on the three dots next to the farm name and then on fertilizer and irrigation. I prefer this method since you can use it from anywhere in the app. You may also arrive at this page through the fertilizer section of the Season Wizard. I'd like to draw your attention to the farm name at the top of the screen. This is an easy reference to be sure you are viewing the mixes and irrigation management for the correct farm. Additionally, notice the tabs here. Currently, we're under the Create or Edit Fertilizer Mixes tab. Working through the tabs from left to right will take you through everything you need to finally generate an irrigation schedule. In this video, we'll only focus on the Create or Edit Mixes tab. You can set up and manage all your fertilizer selections, application methods and frequencies for this farm here. You may have any number of fertilizer mixes for different scenarios. For example, here we have two different mixes for macadamia, one specific to summer and the other winter. I can simply change from the summer mix to the winter mix at any time. If I was to change to the winter mix in May, AgriWiz takes what was applied through the summer mix into account automatically. This feature is to allow you flexibility to change from one mix to another. The mixes may be different fertilizer selections, application methods, or application frequencies. Having a cost savings mix is another example. A special note to users coming from the old version of AgriWiz. If you have seasons in the system but do not use tank mixes, you will see that AgriWiz has carried over your previous application methods and fertilizer choices for each farm and given them a temporary name. The name is often the first fertilizer in that combination. These will appear in the relevant drop-down menus with an X in front of them. This will also apply to any tank mixes that have been created but not used in recent seasons. The reason we've done this is for continuity purposes. You may rename these mixes and use them or just leave them as is. With the X in front of the name, they will be listed at the bottom of your fertilizer mixes. Should you rename it, click Save afterwards. Let's go through the steps of adding a fertilizer mix. Click on this button to add a mix. Give your fertilizer mix a name. This may be anything that you desire. In our case, we call this mix Mac Standard Mix. I would like to use this mix as the default for my farm, but I have the other mixes available to change to under certain circumstances. Next, select the default application method. This is the method you will most commonly use to apply fertilizer to the crop. Alternative application methods may also be used, but we'll get to that. The drop-down menu lists all the application methods. For a detailed explanation of each, click on the question mark in the corner and you'll be taken to the relevant section of our help files. For the purposes of this tutorial, we will select fertigation. If you have any controllers linked to your account, you will have the option to select which one to link to this mix. The first time you use this page, you will select No Template. If you have previously created fertilizer mixes, you can select one of those as a template. Frequency refers to how often fertilizer is given to the crop. If fertilizer is given continuously or in intervals not greater than a week, then select weekly or less. Alternatively, select the appropriate time interval. We'll select monthly. This means that AgriWiz will provide me with a tank mix recipe for each month. It doesn't mean that you'll only apply the fertilizer through the irrigation once per month. Applying or dosing that fertilizer would happen throughout the month with irrigation events. My goal would be to have all the fertilizer given for that month out of the storage tanks by the time the next month or application period comes around. Click on Save. We will now be able to edit our fertilizer mix. Since this fertilizer mix includes tanks, we must first set up the tanks in the next panel so that we can select the tanks used to supply each element. This will make sense in a moment. Expand the Fertilizer Tanks section. First, select the fertilizer injection method, either per tank or per valve. Per tank means that injection happens at one place in the pump house and is distributed to multiple fields. This causes a compromise, and I recommend you watch the tank calculation explanation in our Introduction to Fertilizer Mixes and Features video. Per valve means fertilizer is injected at each valve, meaning each field may receive custom fertilizer applications to supply its unique requirements. We'll select Injection per tank. Select Add Tank. This will open a dialog box. Give the tank a name. For example, Tank A or Tank 1, etc. We'll go with Tank 1. Next, provide the volume of the tank. This does not need to be the total carrying capacity of the tank. You may have 2000 litre storage tanks, but might want to make up only to 500 litres at a time. In that case, the tank volume would be inserted as 500 litres. We will use 1000 litres. Next is the injection correction factor. The default value is 100%. This value permits you to increase or decrease the injection rate against the recommended injection rate. A few moments ago, I mentioned that I need to have applied all the fertilizer I mixed in my storage tanks by the end of the application period. Using injection correction is one way to ensure that. The farm could have experienced heavy rain that decreases the amount of irrigation events delivering the fertilizer. Increasing the injection correction would increase the injection rate, enabling me to get more fertilizer down with minimum water. Just note that there are associated risks with applying high concentrations of fertilizer to plants. Next, we can specify whether this is a concentrate tank or not. A concentrated tank is a tank that contains the minimum amount of water needed to dissolve the required amount of fertilizer. This means that a tank will often not be filled to its holding capacity. The advantage of concentrate tanks is that the same mix can be used across multiple fertigation systems if they only contain one fertilizer. Remember that concentrates carry an increased risk of precipitation. Please refer to the support document on fertilizer solubility and incompatibility for more information. In this case, we won't be using concentrate tanks. Click Save to create the tank. Repeat this process to add the required number of tanks. A minimum of 3 will help to avoid precipitation problems. I would like to use 6 tanks as it provides more flexibility and a lower risk of precipitation than 3 tanks. You can edit these details or delete a tank using the pen or bin icons. The names of the new tanks will appear on the tank list and will be available in the drop-down lists in the panel above. We will now select the fertilizers to be used for each element from the drop-down lists. Each drop-down will only contain those products suitable for the application type selected for this fertilizer mix. In our case, that is fertigation. If we use the template, the previously selected fertilizer will be shown. Note that each row is dedicated to an element. Fertilizer selections are also split between single and multi-element fertilizers. We may specify tank fertilizers, alternative application methods for each element, and the alternative fertilizer. Firstly, select the tank that will contain this fertilizer. We'll look at nitrogen as an example. Nitrogen will go into tank 1. Next, select the tank fertilizer. Note that for each element you must select a single fertilizer, except when master element is selected on a multi-fertilizer. I will explain this when we get to master element. Multi-fertilizers are optional. Single fertilizers only contain one of the essential elements required by the plant. In contrast, multi-fertilizers contain at least two elements. Selected multi-fertilizers will be used in preference to single fertilizers, but single fertilizers may still have to be utilized to provide the correct ratio of elements. In general, it is recommended we try use single fertilizers as much as possible, as this will help to simplify our operation. We'll select ammonium nitrate as our single source for nitrogen. Should I need to make any corrective applications, I'm going to choose field application per plant with urea as the alternative single element fertilizer. Just note that choosing an alternative application is not compulsory and is only there should you want to apply corrective applications. Alternative fertilizers will only be used when the tank fertilizers can't be. In general, if you are using tank fertilizers, the alternative fertilizers are used to correct each field-specific shortage caused by the average allocation of elements via the tank system. Let's say we'd like to use monoammonium phosphate as a multi-element source for nitrogen. We again specify the tank and then select a tank fertilizer. Additionally, I have the option to choose an alternative application method and fertilizer for a multi-element fertilizer if I need to. In this case, I won't need to do so. We'll repeat the process and make our selections for the other elements according to our needs. A new feature is being able to specify master elements. Again, please watch the section of the Introduction to Fertilizer Mixes and Features video on master elements to understand this concept. Notice that I selected master element for calcium nitrate. I did this because I want to stay away from calcium chloride as a single fertilizer. Since I selected master element here, I do not need to select a single element fertilizer for calcium, since calcium nitrate will be used to satisfy the calcium requirement. To illustrate how AgriWiz calculates fertilizer quantities, let's look at the multi-element fertilizers and nitrogen. Firstly, AgriWiz will look at the amount of nitrogen applied through calcium nitrate. Since I selected master element for calcium, the possibility exists that all the nitrogen could be supplied through calcium nitrate. However, should it not cover the requirement, the next source AgriWiz will try to use is monoammonium phosphate. But because master element is not selected here, monoammonium phosphate will only be used until either the nitrogen or phosphorus requirement is satisfied. Suppose the phosphorus requirement is satisfied, but there is still a shortage of nitrogen. Only then will AgriWiz use the single element tank fertilizer to supply it. If there is still a shortage due to the compromise of using injection by tanks, then AgriWiz will recommend the balance be supplied by the alternative application. This process is the same for any element. I mentioned the compromise from using tank injection, and that brings me to the tank calculation method. Again, please watch the explanation given in the Introduction to Fertilizer Mixes and Features video. The default selection is best fit, and we'll keep it there. You'll notice the warning at the bottom, stating a precipitation risk in Tank 6. Certain elements are incompatible when mixed. Tank 6 serves as the microelement tank, so all the micros are lumped together. By just changing boron and molybdenum to Tank 2, the phosphorus tank, the precipitation risk is removed. AgriWiz will generate a warning if you select incompatible elements in the same tank. Please refer to the guidelines for fertigation in the support files for more details on precipitation and avoiding it. Once we are completed with fertilizer selections or any changes made, click Save. Remember that any changes that are made to fertilizer mixes will be implemented to all the seasons linked to the mix. If you have irrigation controllers, you may use this section to give instructions for the scheduled start date and day of the week. Controllers and sensors may be linked to your account via the Sensor and Controller Accounts page. This is covered by the help files and in a separate video. When you're finished, click Save and select Link Mixes to Seasons and create fertilizer programs. This is where mixes are linked to seasons and where you would change from one mix to another if you need to. I'll explain how to link and unlink fertilizer mixes to seasons in another video. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope that it's been helpful. Remember, comprehensive help files are available under the question mark in the corner. Please send any comments or suggestions to support@agriwiz.mu.